Hi, welcome everyone to LEAD 2025. We're making this recording for all of our folks who are attending who are going to be attending our Legislative Education and Advocacy Day next Tuesday. Promises to be a great day. We're still checking the weather, so keep an eye out whether you'll need an umbrella or a coat or any of those other lovely things. But we're definitely looking forward to an exciting day ahead. So what we want to do now is kind of walk through some of the logistics about what you're going to see and hear and expect during that day. What we hope that you'll be able to accomplish during that day, which is talking to your elected officials and having a meaningful visit, an appointment. And then hopefully our president will be able to join us for a special message. I'm going to start with talking about some of the logistics. My name's Joanna Bird. I'm executive director with NASW. And I do want to just very quickly introduce everybody that is here on the screen with me. All right, Angie, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Armbrust. I'm with McNeese GR, which is the NASW-PA's state government relations firm. We work on your behalf with the legislature and administration here in Harrisburg.
Natalie?
Good morning, Natalie Cook. I work with Angie on your behalf to serve NASW.
All right. Tim?
Good morning. My name is Tim Chambers. I'm an intern with the National Association for Social Workers, Pennsylvania chapter, and a student.
And Liberty.
I am also an intern at NASW-PA chapter, and I'm also a student, and I'm glad to be here.
All right, thank you. So over the course of the next week, we're going to be doing the lead up to lead trainings. Those will be each one of those will be recorded and posted on our website. So if you're watching this video, then you're probably going to be able to access some of the others. As the week goes on, we'll deep dive a little bit more into the issues that we plan to talk about. We'll spend some time talking about mental health funding. We'll spend some time talking about the social work compact and the sweet bill. And then on Friday, we'll have just kind of a roundup a little bit more about like macro social work and advocacy and building a little bit of your skills in that area. Then next Tuesday is the big day, and we are going to meet at City Island somewhere in the range of like 10 a.m. is when we'll start having registration and check-in open. We have about an hour there of just time to gather for everybody to arrive, like a good window. You know, we have folks coming in from as nearby as walking distance. I remember one of our first attendees last year was somebody who showed up who literally had walked there from their home because they go somewhere local. And then also as far away as Erie, which is a good 5-hour drive. So lots of good range there. One hint, if you're coming to City Island, is make sure you've used the restroom first, because there's no access to bathrooms on City Island. So if you're coming in one of those buses or something, maybe make sure to make a stop at one of the last turnpike plazas or wherever else might be accessible to, like, for everybody on the bus who needs to use the restroom. There is a restroom within walking distance, but it is quite a ways away, like about as far as the march will take you. So after that, after we gather, you'll check in, you'll get a tote bag that's going to be full of materials like a booklet that gives you some direction and talking points and everything else. There'll be a couple of, you'll get like a bottle of water, a few other like handouts, etc. And then from there, you'll be gathering for the march. Our president, Sierra McNeil, who'll be joining us a little bit later on today, will be leading the march. And we'll walk and we'll do some chants and we'll really emphasize the power of social work. And then we'll gather on the Capitol steps where legislators and other spokespeople will be joining us to talk more about social work, why social work is important, why it's essential that we support social workers, and fund social workers and fill our workforce shortages. And then from there, you'll be going to your legislative appointments. Now, I'm wondering, Tim, can I ask you to speak a little bit about the appointments that you and Liberty have been setting up for us?
Well, there's, the legislators really do want to meet you all, and it is a busy day for them. So, in some cases, they're on the schedule, but we might be meeting one of their team members of their team, which is just as good because they relay the information to the legislator. And then it's even on more than one person's like radar of what we're trying to get accomplished with pushing these bills through. The times will vary. We have to be prompt with the times. And even when we're at the steps, we'll make sure that we do like little time hacks for people that have their schedule. And it's a very assortment of all day different times, but you'll definitely have that information ahead of time, most importantly. And our program will have a map in it to help you get to the office, wherever it is. But they're really excited to meet you, and it's so exciting to be part of this, to be part of history, essentially.
All right, thank you, Tim. And one thing that's relevant is that Tim and Liberty both have been working very hard on setting all of these appointments for NASW-PA and for all of our student groups who are attending. The general idea is that you'll be meeting with the member of the House of Representatives that is local to your school, the senator for the same. And then we also do have some additional meetings with members of the licensure committee, which is the committee where our social work compact bill is going. The social work compact bill, those appointments with those licensure committee members are open for those who want additional experience. But they're also, if, for example, your school is coming, but neither your representative nor your senator was available for a meeting, nor any of their staff, then we may ask that you attend one of those other additional meetings. Regardless, there will be a place for you to go. And where you will find that information is one of two places. We are going to be posting it on the website, and then we're also going to have a handout that that will go in all of the tote bags that will kind of illuminate all of the appointments along with like what room numbers they're in, etc. There are some challenging places around the Capitol. There are some places that are a little bit hard to find. Actually, I know, Angie, that's not what you were scheduled to talk about, but could I ask you to talk a little bit about the Capitol and finding your way around?
Yes, of course. Yes, you're correct that there are some locations that are a little tricky to locate. Just a quick overview, if it says main Capitol, that's going to be the kind of front of the building. When you walk up the big grand stairs where our rally will be, you walk through security, you are in the main Capitol. It's big, grand, rotunda, marble staircase with, wings off to the left and right. That is, to the left is where all of the Senate, almost all of the Senate is, and to the right is where, that's the House side. But then there's what's called the East Wing, which is a newer annex that was built onto the back of the Capitol. So if your room location has an EW or East Wing after it, that means you're going to kind of walk through the main rotunda, around the big grand staircase that's inside, back to the East Wing. There are banners, kind of brass signs that up top on the ceilings that kind of direct you. And there is an information desk in the main rotunda and an information desk in the East Wing rotunda. Those people are always happy to help and are a wealth of informational knowledge. And there's also security, in all the hallways as well. So all of those tools are at your disposal. Go ahead, Tim, you want to mention the other buildings as well?
Can you talk a little about the Irvis office building? That is the only other destination that we have appointments scheduled.
Yeah, there is another office building adjacent to the Capitol called the Irvis office building. You can access that via a tunnel in the East Wing rotunda. So again, we kind of go through the Capitol to the East Wing, and then there's a fork in the hallway that takes you off to the right to the Irvis building. And again, information desk in the East Wing is more than happy to point people in the correct direction there.
Angie, could you talk a little bit about, I think on that one building in the main Capitol where the floors don't match up?
In the main Capitol, the floor numbers go 1, is it 2, Natalie?
1E2, and E, those offices are labeled as 500. So if you have an office labeled 500, you're technically going to the second floor, which will be labeled E in the elevator. And if you take the stairs, it's just the next set up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, the information desk can point you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And it will, and I actually think they might even have small signs in the elevators these days.
Yeah.
E, I mean, 5 offices starting with 5.
With 5. And then other than that, it matches up, except I remember the 6th floor, I think it was, or something like that.
The fifth floor is
the 5th floor is really 600. So.
It won't be up there.
But that one's all office spaces. All right. Thank you to those who are joining us now. We're walking through kind of some of the logistics of attending LEAD. This is recorded, so everyone will have access to anything that was missed as well. So those were the logistics of LEAD. I'm just going to give a really quick summary of the bills that we're going to be addressing. Knowing that the next few days when we do as we continue our lead up to LEAD series, that we'll be going more in depth on each of these issues. To an extent, what we're going to be asking you to talk about with your elected officials, we kind of just want them to know more about social work, more about who you are as social workers and some of the issues that we face as a profession. That's kind of the theme that ties a lot of this together. Mental health funding is definitely an important part of that because, we need access. We need, it's part of the lack of mental health funding is part of the reason why we have the workforce issues that we do. If we can allocate and prioritize that, then we can also, support our social workers. But in that, then we do have a couple of specific pieces of legislation. One of which is that over the last couple of years at the national level, there has been movement towards a social work compact that would allow social workers to gain access to join a compact that would allow for interstate practice between any of the states who have joined the compact. And initially we had there was just one, we started a couple of years ago with a blank slate. The first year, one state passed the bill. the second year, which is last year, basically, an additional 21 states joined the compact, which hit us to that minimum of 7 states that had to join in order for the compact to get started. It also far exceeded that. And now not only do we have 22 states who have officially joined the compact, but there are another 18, including Pennsylvania, who are in the state like we are of trying to get the compact bill passed and working to join. There were some, if you were attending LEAD last year, or have been following this issue, then you know that there were some barriers that were specific to Pennsylvania related to FBI background checks that were preventing legislation from moving forward in Pennsylvania. Those issues have been resolved and are moving forward. Now compacts do have the ability to become into fruition here in Pennsylvania. So with that obstacle out of the way, we're looking to get the bill passed as quickly as possible. We have a House sponsor, Representative Arian Abney, and a Senate sponsor, Senator Pennycook, who are running with the bill this session. There have been quite a few people who have co-sponsored the piece of legislation, but we're still seeking additional co-sponsors, in particular in the Senate, where it is still in co-sponsor memo stage, but also in the House. Folks are still able to join, even though that one does have a bill number. It is bill number House Bill 554. Folks are still able to sign on as a co-sponsor, and we're seeking bipartisan co-sponsorship. So that's what you'll be asking for there. The other bill that we'll be emphasizing during LEAD is House Bill 66, known as the SWEET bill. That stands for Social Worker Education, Enrollment, and Training bill. That bill would allow for a fund for stipends that would go to social work students during their practicum year, because we know that so many times our students are having to leave jobs, drop out, leave their health insurance because of leaving those jobs. And or are having to work 2 or 3 jobs while also, raising a family and attending classes, etc. I know I've dealt with that with many of the interns who have worked with NASW, including some of the ones that we have with us right now. So that is an important piece of legislation, but I think the biggest question that we get on that one is, how is it going to be funded, or how much money would be involved in that? We will talk about that more. Of that is the biggest obstacle, of course, to getting anything passed, is that it is always competing resources. But that's why we want you to talk to them just about your experiences, the people that you've heard, like how this is a barrier for you, because those personal stories are what really will make a difference in that field. The vast majority of our legislators are not social workers. Only one is, that's Arian Abney. There's quite a few others that have social workers as family members or social workers on their staffs, etc. But for the most part, they don't have a really good realization about what it means to get a social work education. That's where you can kind of fill in some of those gaps. So those are the 2 bills that we'll be talking more about. And with that, I'd actually like to pass it over to our lobbying team, Angie Armbrust and Natalie Cook, who can give you a little bit more information and insight about those legislative visits.
Hi, everyone. Joanna, can I share, or can you actually just pull up my PowerPoint?
I believe I just gave you permission to share.
Okay. Can everyone see, or can you see just the PowerPoint, or can you see my whole computer screen?
We
It's the
can,
whole screen.
Can you see my whole screen, or?
I can see your PowerPoint window, like the top part, and all the slides on the side of the screen. Yeah,
Thanks.
you should probably put it in from beginning. Yeah, there you
there
go.
we go.
That's good.
Perfect.
That's good.
Thanks for the assist. I appreciate it. For everybody who wasn't here when we introduced ourselves, I'll do that really quickly. My name's Angie Armbrust. Here with my colleague Natalie Cook. We work at McNeese GR. We're a Harrisburg-based state government relations firm. We represent NASW-PA in state government. So that's legislative and state agencies. We keep your leadership informed and involved in all state policy decisions related to your field.
Good morning, Natalie Cook. I'm going to talk a little bit about our work with NASW. We work within the Pennsylvania state government legislation, the legislature that comprises the House and the Senate. We assist NASW with their advocacy initiatives each 2-year session cycle. So as Joanna mentioned earlier, House Bill 554, the compact bill, and then House Bill 66, the sweet bill. We work to raise your profile within state government, not just in the legislature, but across the various departments as well. Part of that is we assist with LEAD, something we call district days, where we encourage NASW members to meet with legislators in their district, and we provide you with the necessary tools to make that an easier thing to do, because it can be daunting if you've never done it before. And we continue to have meetings weekly with legislators and department staff and other officials within the administration that we think are important for NASW to know and for them to know NASW. We partner with your leaders to train social workers to be skilled advocates. You all mostly already have all the skills you need to be an advocate. You're uniquely suited to be advocates because of your social worker training. So it's just taking those skills and putting them into practice in a slightly different venue. There's ongoing educational efforts to inform state leaders and policymakers on the impact of social workers in the Commonwealth. So you all have varied experiences and jobs and places of work. And I think we really want to ensure that as we're having these conversations, that legislators and administration officials understand the depth of your profession and the populations that you work with and the places that you work.
I'll just do a brief overview of the 2025-2026 legislative session that kicked. So Pennsylvania has 2-year session terms. We are currently in the very beginning of this 2-year session. It kicked off on the first Tuesday of January of this year. Backtracking a little bit to the November 2024 election results that gave us the people who are here in this legislative session. The Pennsylvania Senate remains status quo. We had one Democratic seat flipped to R and one R flipped to D. So those numbers remain the same. There's a healthy Republican majority in the state Senate. The House, the Pennsylvania House, also remains status quo. That's 102 Democrats to 101 Republicans. Every incumbent won and every open seat stayed the same party. So alternatively, all the row offices, so that's the state treasurer, the auditor general, the attorney general, et cetera, those all were won by Republicans. That is not as impactful as the day-to-day work that we do on your behalf with NASW, but it is of note. And then kind of what's that mean for the governor? Although he was not up for the election, he has 2 more years in his first term. He kind of emerged unscathed, right? He was at one point seen as a potential vice presidential candidate. He was a strong supporter for the top of the ticket last fall. He still gets to tout his experience with what he calls divided government. You know, the fact that he has one chamber under Republican control and one under Democratic control, it does require bipartisanship, and a lot of compromise and negotiation, that he kind of can use that to tout his skills. So he is, kind of emerges as still that one of a small number of contenders for higher office in the future. But so what's that mean for this legislative session? Kind of the same, but different. I don't know if anybody can recall the start of the 2023-24 session, but that was when the House Democrats first won that one seat majority after almost, I think, either a decade or slightly more than a decade of Republican control. And there were some vacancies and special elections and some constitutional arguments over what a majority meant if elections. So the last session took several months to really get down to regular business. That is not the case this year. We are kind of all settled. We're same but different, meaning, the House Ds, it was not a fluke. They were able to maintain that one seat majority. They are, their leadership team is solidified, and so, kind of all speaking with one voice. The House Republican caucus is under new leadership, and the House implemented some rule changes, changing the number of Republican versus Democrat members on committees, and they added a couple of new committees as well. So what's all of that mean for our efforts? It really means that a bipartisan approach is imperative. Like we mentioned, we have our champion for the compact bill, Representative Arian Abney. He's a Democratic House member. We're working to talk about the fact that support for a compact bill for social workers is really not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It is a workforce issue. It is an access to care issue. So, to that end, we're meeting with Republicans and Democrats in the House to, get more people to sign on to his bill to push for movement there. And we sought out a Republican sponsor for a companion bill in the Senate, that's Senator Pennycook, that Joanna alluded to earlier, because she is a Republican senator with a long decorated military career history. So compacts were initially kind of a U.S. Department of Defense initiative to deal with the impacts of military families having to move state to state to state, often making that difficult for families. So again, bipartisan is important. It's important to be reaching across the aisle and speaking to, not just our typical longtime champions, but, people of all walks of life, to talk about why access to care and workforce is important.
State government advocacy. I'm going to talk a little bit about why you should advocate for your profession. It provides you with the opportunity to take ownership and have a say in what's expected of you as professionals. So if there are any changes to your practice act, to anything that affects your practice as a social worker, telemedicine, whether you work in a place that's subject to other kinds of regulations, those things all come from state government. So the more you speak up and advocate for yourself and for your profession, the more you have a say in what those outcomes are, and then ultimately how it impacts your job. The roles you can play in advocacy are participating in events like LEAD and district days, written communication, posting on social media, emails, letters to your legislators, to your elected officials in Congress, op-eds that are on important issues to the population you serve. So op-eds in your home district that your legislator might see are all great ways to participate in being an advocate. And it's all levels of advocacy there. If you're more comfortable just, written communication, or you're more comfortable speaking with someone in person, this allows you to have several different ways to participate and be an advocate. Things to remember when you go into an advocacy meeting, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in depth as well, but be prepared, be a good source of information. So, know what you're going to talk about ahead of time, personalize your message. If there's a way you can impart a story or a personal experience that will get your point across, that's really helpful. Try to avoid jargon that they may not understand. Not everyone, most of them are not experts in social work. So, terms that are unique or are more well known within the field, try to avoid those. And know both sides of the issue that you're talking about. You want to anticipate what kind of questions you might get from an opposition standpoint. Be polite. Make sure you make your ask for a response, and then make sure you just follow up and say thank you.
So what are the meetings actually like? What's a legislative meeting going to be like on Tuesday? And what should you know ahead of time? So like Natalie said, before the meeting, you want to be prepared. NASW is providing you with a wealth of information. There will be information, I think Tim had said, available on the website prior, just by watching these videos as part of that preparation, watching the rest of the videos throughout this week as we do a deeper dive on each of the topics. All of that's going to prepare you with the information and help you to kind of digest it over time so you feel prepared when you get here next Tuesday. If you're attending in a group, go ahead and talk ahead of time about who's going to do what, who's going to say what in that meeting, so you don't kind of arrive and then all sit there and look at each other or kind of talk over top of each other. So a couple of words of advice for being inside, actually in the meeting once it begins. Be punctual, please be on time. Let's make sure we know where we're going, figure out the office location, give yourself time to navigate the building. The building will probably be full that day. It will be a busy legislative day with a lot of groups here. So give yourself time to kind of navigate to where you're going. Take a deep breath before you walk in the door. Be polite, be clear about the issue you want to discuss, introduce yourself to the staff who are sitting inside the door and, state why you're there, what time your meeting was for. Once the meeting begins, whether it be with staff or with the legislator themselves, you want to, again, share some personal stories and some data to support why we're asking for the compact bill and why we're asking for the sweep training bill. As you're wrapping up, thanking them for their time at the end of the meeting. I always open with a thank you as well, too. I say, thank you so much for meeting with us. We understand it's a very busy session day and you have a lot of things pulling your attention. So thank you for taking the 15 minutes to talk to our group today, and then reiterate that at the end. Write down questions or any follow-up that's needed. Again, sometimes you'll get sidetracked a little and because they'll have a question about social work education, or they'll have their sister was a social worker and worked in a specific field, and do you know anything about how this policy affected that field that she worked in? That you might get an off-the-wall question. It's completely fine to say, that's a great question, I don't know, but I would love to follow up with you. That gives you a kind of natural opportunity for that second touch point. And then again, sending a thank you note via email is easiest. So make sure you grab business cards of whoever you're meeting with.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the roles of attendees. So sort of what Angie just described. The facilitator is the person who kind of takes the lead, distributes the agenda, the materials that you might have, opens and closes the meeting, introduces himself, and then indicates who's going to talk next, and generally keeps the discussion moving, focused and on task. So like Angie mentioned, if there's one of those off the wall questions that kind of gets you sidetracked, and it can be really easy, especially if that breeds a connection, to just continue talking about that and totally miss your point. So the facilitator should be somebody who's comfortable with kind of steering things back on track and getting back to the point to make sure that you at least touch on those things that you came to talk about. Presenter is the person who will explain the purpose of the meeting, present that ask that you have. So in this case, the compact bill and the sweep bill. And then make the ask, whether it's signing on as a co-sponsor or just considering the legislation. Whatever your ask is for the day, make sure that is the person who is comfortable asking. Storyteller. If you have a personal experience, somebody who is really good at conveying that experience or a story that helps explain the issue and why it's important. Especially if they're a constituent, that's even more impactful, because generally then they're talking about the population they work with is within the district. They're also constituents of the legislator. And then somebody should be the note taker who takes all those notes and writes down all those questions. Someone who's well organized and is able to put that together post meeting so that you are able to give feedback, not just to, NASW, but to your group as a whole, and then able to follow up on those questions that were asked that you may not have had an answer for.
We'll just run through these quickly because they're kind of recaps of everything we've talked about, but just some basic tips for success. Remember the golden rule. Obviously, be respectful, treat people in a way that you would want to be respected. Occasionally, we have groups come to Harrisburg with the attitude of, well, I pay their salary. So technically, yes, you are taxpayers, but we are still respectful of their time and their efforts and their willingness to sit down and listen to what we're bringing to the table that day, especially when we're talking to staff, because oftentimes they've got a lot on their plates. Be on time, but be ready for anything. With session, when you're here in Harrisburg on a session day, committee meetings can be called at what they call at the call of the chair, which means as soon as the chairman decides it's time for the meeting, they can say right now, and that could be in the middle of your meeting, and the legislator may have to get up and leave. Or they could be delayed because of another meeting, or honestly, any number of things can happen. So just set yourself up for success by being on time, but being as flexible as you possibly. We've said many times that we've mentioned you might meet with staff. Please don't ever be disappointed by that. The staff are experts in policy fields, and they've been if they're designated to meet with you, it's because they are the person that advises the senator or the representative usually on healthcare policy issues. So you're meeting with somebody whose job it is to take the information, distill it, and pass it along to their boss. Introductions are important. I love to have everybody talk a little bit about, very briefly, where you're from and what your role is. So obviously students, you can say, which school you're from, but you could briefly state, where your home is. And you can also kind of briefly state what kind of work you want to do. For practitioners who are already in the field, obviously talking about the population you serve and the job that you do is important, because social workers do so many different things. Oftentimes you'll have a legislator who has a view of what social workers do in their mind. So it's important for them to hear from a variety of professionals in the field, talking about all the things they do. I had noted start positively and with a thank you, and I'll have to restate that. Keeping it brief, being mindful. I like to tell people, be prepared for a 10-minute meeting, be thrilled with 15 and overjoyed with 20. Especially on a busy session day. We'll probably schedule these, I assume, in maybe 20 to 30-minute blocks, but that's on a busy session day, you might not get that full 30 minutes, and don't be offended by that. Just keep your meeting tight, to the point, but make some connections while you're there. Personalizing your position, for sure, especially, we've got a lot of students coming to lead, and I think both of the issues, both of the bills plus the overall mental health funding, need for increases, are all things that we should all be able to speak comfortably about. Let them talk after we've done introductions and after we've, made the asks, kind of open up the discussion. What do you think about this? Are you aware of these bills? Do you have personal experience with social work? And then just kind of take what they're saying and listen carefully, because that will give you a lot of perhaps clues about where they stand on issues.
A couple more tips. As we've said, stay on topic, stick to your role. It's very important to say, I'm not sure, if you don't know the answer to something. Do not craft a lie of any kind. And then, as Angie mentioned before, that is an excellent way to create a relationship, because it allows you to follow up with the staffer or with the legislator themselves. Don't overstate or over-exaggerate your points. The more concise and clear you are, the easier it is for them to grasp what you're telling them. We noted avoid using jargon or acronyms that are unfamiliar to them. Don't forget to make the ask. Don't forget to say, please consider signing on as a co-sponsor to our compact bill. take notes and make sure you get business cards, as we noted, from all staff and the legislators. It's a great way to follow up. If you already have the email, it's a lot easier to just write that thank you email and send the information along that you've promised to give them.
And that's it. We'll stop sharing. And does anyone have any questions?
The only thing that I will add on to what you said, like just kind of, well, one, just to emphasize the absolute of yes, if you're asked a question you don't know the answer to, the best response to that is to say, I don't know. But another option you have, especially if the question seems really complicated, as opposed to finding the answer yourself and getting back to them, is just making sure that you've written down the question well and getting that question back to us as NASW and with our lobbying team, and we can be the follow-up point if you're, especially if you're going like, yeah, I'm here at this event and I don't, my schedule is incredibly busy and I know I'm not going to be able to follow up. That we still want to make sure that we get those questions down, but I just wanted to ensure that you knew that you had an alternate way of addressing that problem that still gets that legislator the information that they need, and still kind of creates a second touch point with the legislator, just not with you personally. But if you'd rather handle that yourself, you also can ask us for information, and then and then get that information back to the legislator directly, handled more specifically by you.
And when you do that, you can always copy Joanna. And then she gets a copy of that correspondence. So we know that that's a person you've created a relationship. And I love that alternative option. I've done that in meetings where I've been asked to pinch hit and step in and just facilitate some lobby day meetings. And it's on an issue that I'm not top notch on. I've pivoted and said, talk to my boss. So that's absolutely an option.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, I just want to again, like, emphasize, that nobody here is expected to be an expert. We know that many of you are lobbying for the first time. We're aware that sometimes people feel a bit of imposter syndrome when they're meeting with their elected officials and feel kind of like, I'm not worthy, or I'm this fraud. How can I? But I do want to emphasize that we know that again, like, only one legislator out there is a social worker. So with that exception, and if you talk to him, he's very friendly and and you'll have plenty of common ground. But outside of that, you are more of an expert on social work than your legislator, than your elected official. So I do want you to take ownership of that as much as you can. And, and just kind of go like, I like, no matter where you are in your social work education or your social work journey, you have some good information to share with your elected officials, that is going to be useful for them and that they need to know. We're asking these legislators are asked to make decisions on our behalf and on behalf of their constituents. And so any information that is going to help them be better at making those decisions is useful. Another thing that we as social workers, when we meet with, when NASW meets with our elected officials, another thing that we offer on the regular is to be a resource, or to find people to be spokespersons for issues that they might face, because we know that if you're not familiar with this, pretty much every legislative office offers constituent services, where people who will call their office looking for resources, maybe because their electric bill was shut off, maybe because they're having trouble accessing government services, maybe because their mother is in need of care and they're like trying to figure out where to send it to. And so us kind of offering ourselves out there as resources that legislators can use is helpful to them, because there's a reason why social workers frequently get that job of doing constituent services in legislative offices. But even in the places where they don't, they need those resources and information. So we as social workers are able to offer to be those resources for some of those folks. Tim, I wondered if you would share a little bit about your experience last year.
Well, absolutely. And first off, I just want to say a fellow student came to me and he was very distraught because he didn't want to meet with that legislator because he doesn't believe that he aligns with his beliefs. This can happen from time to time, but we have to remember that it's bigger than the music. What we're doing is like for the whole state and for all social workers. And we have to but this opens the door for him because then he can reach out to him again and he can express his perspective to the legislator at another time. He kind of opens that door and then maybe, then they'll understand it from his perspective. And, he could gain some ground with that individual that he doesn't believe is aligned with his beliefs. So that's just another neat opportunity, even if you don't know much about that, they don't know much about you, but you're going to get some great FaceTime and take that back to us so we can make this really come to life. So you guys are our representatives big time, you play a big part. But last year it was amazing. It was kind of like magical. It was exciting. The speakers on the steps, we were all together. I didn't do the march because I was working. I was one of those that had to quit my job to adhere to a internship. And the staff are all very friendly and they're there because they want to be there. And so it didn't feel really nervous at all. And these are just normal things that we're talking about. We're not doing quantum physics. So keeping it on that level of just the reality of the struggles that I'm sure many of you have been through in the field, as you're pursuing your master's degree. So it was amazing. And it was I was elated just as much as some of my military stuff I've done. I felt like it was an accomplishment. And now we have to try even harder to actually make this stuff conclude and come to life this time around.
All right. Are there any other questions from those in the audience? All right. Well, we won't keep anyone longer than necessary, but again, I do want to remind, I know there were some issues with the link this morning. This entire presentation is recorded, and we will be posting that on YouTube later this afternoon. The recording itself will be made available to everyone. Yes, there will be fact sheets made available. There's a booklet that every attendee will be getting that includes like an FAQ for each of the bills, who the current sponsors are in the House, talking points, the bill summary, etc. Is there any way we can get them ahead of time? Yes, those information is available publicly, and you can also, if you go to our website, I don't know if it's those specific talking points and information, but there's certainly a wealth of information on both of those bills that you can access on the website. We also do have a copy of the booklet that we prepared, and we will be working to get that on the LEAD website as well. Thank you for your questions. But we do want to make sure again that this recording will be made public and will be available to all. Alicia and I will be touching base after this to check to get further details about like what happened with the links this morning and trying to figure that out. So stay tuned. I don't want to tell you exactly what the solution is going to be for that one, but stay tuned. But one of those two links that you had will be will be what you need. It won't be a different one. And then but I do want to say that, you know, tomorrow's program will be on mental health funding, the state of mental health funding in Pennsylvania. We have representatives from both the Senate and the governor's office who will be joining us. The following day, we have we're going to be talking about the sweet bill, and we have people who have been working on that bill from the beginning, including Representative Howard's staff and members of the NASW-PA team that will be working on that. And they'll be the spokespersons on Wednesday. On Thursday, we'll be talking about the Social Work Compact bill in depth. Representative Abney will be joining us, and potentially someone from Senator Pennycook's staff as well. And then Friday, we'll just be going a little bit more in depth about ethics, advocacy, like macro social work, you know, go a little bit more in depth about some of the stuff we talked about today, but from like more of a social work perspective and how that like ties back into our profession and our code of ethics. So with that, that's our summary for where we're going from here. We hope you'll join us for at least one or two more of these presentations. If not, then regardless, we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at LEAD. Thank you.
Everyone.